So again, my name is Oliver Neffer. I am the hearing officer for the case that you have, that you're here to attend. This is a case number CPC 2020-31-CU-DB-MCUP-SPR. This case is scheduled for 11 a.m. today. However, the previous hearing ran a little long, so we are starting now, 11:20. And so I have a couple of items that I need to go through before we start this hearing. And so I'm going to read them verbatim. In conformity with the governor's executive order N-2920, issued on March 17th, 2020, and due to concerns over COVID-19, this meeting is being held entirely telephonically. People wishing to speak or submit written testimony about this case should do so during this hearing. Before we begin, I want to share some general instructions on the virtual meeting format. We will begin following the order of the agenda. In this case, we are the last item, and so we are taking on this case currently. There is a meeting presentation that has been uploaded, and that meeting presentation is on the first page of the agenda, and you can then go visit tinyurl.com/shared-drive. When public comments are open for the item that you wish to speak on, you will be instructed to press *9 on your phone or the raise your hand tab on the Zoom app. When it's your turn to speak, planning staff will announce the last 4 digits of your phone number or your name. Callers should dial *6 when prompted to unmute. I will repeat these instructions before we begin public comment. This is a new format, although not entirely new for our meetings, and we wish to thank everyone in advance for their patience. Staff may need some extra time to organize the callers, as you've already seen. If you have any day of meeting submissions, please submit them to me at this time. You can email them to me. My email address is Oliver, oliver.netburn, netburn @lacity.org. And then if you would wish to receive any determinations of those letters for this item, you can add your name to the contact information to the interested parties list. And a link to the interested parties list is provided on the agenda as well. Provide your email and mailing address and the case number of the item you are interested in. So this hearing that we have today, there will be no decision that will be made. I'm just here to listen and receive comments that will be incorporated into a recommendation report that will be submitted to the planning commission at a future date. That date has not been set yet, so we will be sending out a subsequent hearing for any future CPC hearing date. I can let you know it probably will not be sometime until either late June or July. The commission meeting is a public meeting, just like this. Commission may permit limited additional public testimony in this case, but today's hearing is established to meet legal notice and hearing requirements prior to the commission taking action, as well as to obtaining public input for preparation of the recommendation report. If anyone wishes to submit additional information to the commission or take exception to the staff report or recommendations, they should do so in writing prior to the commission meeting. Just going back to, as we're now about to begin the meat of this hearing. So this case, as I indicated, is case number CPC-2020-3140-CU-DB-MCUP-SPR. This case is for the demolition of existing structures, and then the construction, use, and maintenance of a new 6-story, 166-unit mixed-use development with 13,000 square feet of commercial space. And 24 of the 166 units will be reserved for very low-income households. The project requires the following entitlements: a conditional use to allow for density above 35%, for a total density of 51%. The base density is 110 units, and so the requested density is 166 units. There is a density bonus request for 3 off-menu incentives to permit a floor area ratio of 3.75 in lieu of 1.5, to permit residential parking at a ratio of 0.0 spaces per dwelling unit, and to allow an additional 22 feet of height over the permitted 45 feet as prescribed in LAMC 21.1. Additionally, the applicant has requested 4 off-menu waiver or modifications of development standards. These include to utilize the RAS 3 zone setbacks and to provide 5-foot setbacks within 2 side yards in lieu of the otherwise required 11-foot setbacks, to allow for a reduced reduction in the required open space by 25%, to allow for 6 stories in lieu of 3 stories, as is the limitation in the 1BL height district, and to allow for additional 20 feet above the maximum allowable height of 67 feet for the elevator structure. So not the building itself, but just the elevator structure to go above the 67 feet. The applicant has also requested a main conditional use to allow for up to 5 establishments that would provide for the sale and dispensing of alcoholic beverages on and off site. And then lastly, there is a site plan review request for development for a project which creates over 50 units. One thing that I'm sure many of you will be aware of, that this project has a environmental clearance that is known as a Sustainable Communities Project Exemption. It's otherwise called a SCIPI. And so the SCIPI is an environmental action that is taken upon by the City Council and the City Council alone. There is currently a council file which has been created. And so anyone who wishes to be a part of the environmental review process that is being conducted by the City Council, they are welcome to do so. Let me quickly get you the council file number for that. Excuse me 1 second while I get it. So the council file number for that, and you can go to, the easiest way I do it is I can go to council file. I can just do a Google search for council file management system. And the first hit usually takes me to the page that I need to get to. And the council file number is 22-0297. And so that'll take you to the council file number where all the information related to the environmental clearance, the Sustainable Communities Project Exemption, all the information is available there. If you would like to be part of the interested parties for that process, you can find me, and I will notify the City Council, the City Clerk, and they will put you on the notification list. So any hearings that are scheduled related to that action, you may be noticed for. So let's see. With that, I think that's everything about the introduction of the case and our hearing process. And so with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first have the applicant come up and make a presentation, and then I will take public comment. We will allow for the applicant the time that they need to make their presentation, and then I will afford anyone from the public the same time that they need to make their comments. However, in the consideration of everyone's time, either if there are comments that have been previously made, that you can just say that you support those comments which have been previously made. Otherwise, if you're able to, try and make your comments as pithy as possible. So with that, I am going to allow for the applicant's team to make their presentation. And so if they can come to the mic.
Hi, thank you. I believe we are waiting on the project architect to be promoted as presenter. James Dixon.
Do we see? I don't see his name there. Do we see his name in there?
There is a member by the name of Dixon participating in the call. I don't know if this is James, if he can identify himself.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Thank you, staff. My name is Ryan Guthrie. I'm representing the Holland Partner Group, the applicant. I'll share my screen, and the project team here can also turn on their videos, and we'll introduce everyone. Confirming you're able to see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Netburn, we have a approximately 30-minute presentation, so just want to confirm that we have that time.
I mean, if you need it, but if you can go faster.
Wonderful. We will endeavor to do so. Again, my name is Ryan Guthrie. I'm with Holland Partner Group. Today we're talking about the redevelopment Taix Square at 1911 Sunset Boulevard in Echo Park. Holland Partner Group is no stranger to Los Angeles. Right here are a handful of photos of recently completed projects over the last 5 to 10 years throughout Los Angeles. We build type 1 high-rises in the historic core, mid-rises in City West with ground floor grocery stores and retail and apartments upstairs, and have even done some adaptive reuse on some historic structures in downtown LA. In the bottom right here is a old medical office building right across from the Good Samaritan Hospital that we renovated structurally and then converted into units. We are a vertically integrated owner, builder, and operator. So in-house is the development team, the general construction team, and then once the building is complete, we operate and manage these buildings. We're based up and down the West Coast, but the Los Angeles team is local, and more or less is a team that has now been operating together for over a decade. Jumping into the Taix Square redevelopment team, today with me is the Taix family, Mike Taix, the owner and operator of the French Restaurant, AC Martin, Jim Dixon, and Jeremy Grant, our architecture team, as well as Mr. Alan Abshez with Loeb & Loeb, our land use and entitlements council. So to get us started, I'd like to hand it off to Mike Taix, who can help explain some of the history of the restaurant and how we got where we are today. Mike?
Thank you. The family founded the original restaurant on 321 Commercial Street, downtown Los Angeles, in 1927. The property that they owned, the Chantor Hotel, was operating in, and that's an interesting story in itself, but we'll move on. And it was a successful enterprise and lasted until 1964. In the early 1960s, we knew that we were subject to closure through eminent domain, bought it off for a while, knowing that there was an imminent closure that took place in 1964. We found a facility in 1962 at the present location, 1911 Sunset. The restaurant was also remodeled in 1969 to accommodate large banquet rooms that we felt would be helpful in continuing and increasing revenue to the restaurant itself. Banquets were popular at that time and continued to be popular until the early 2000s. We later on decided to move away from a continental type decor and continued to move the restaurant back to its original roots, closer to what you see in the depictions there, and to make the restaurant look more like it was in 1927. Apparently grossly oversized, horribly energy inefficient, and requires a lot of upkeep and has a lot of unused space. We use approximately 15 to 25% of the banquet rooms, a lot of unused space. We had giant parking lots to accommodate those spaces. And with the advent of ride share, which also has decreased the need for the parking lots, we saw that continuing in the current facility would be untenable. Revenues did increase, continue to increase. Business wasn't bad. It was a matter of cost climbing. And the new vision was to get a smaller platform, something more manageable, and operate on the main focus of what currently is our business, and it's the lounge area and the main dining room. We do have a decent business for some smaller banquets, but the large banquet rooms go mainly unused, and does the parking lot. With an eye to this, we put out the word and we started looking quietly for some partners to assist us in this development process. And after interviewing over a dozen, we landed on Holland, which had an eye and a sensitivity for preserving what we wanted to do, and having worked with other organizations in the city of Los Angeles and successfully working with them in developing with an eye to maintaining a historic angle. Right now, we really are looking forward to getting on with this project. We're excited. We really want to make the place look even older inside. And one other development that really kind of hurt everybody was the COVID period. And we had to install some outdoor dining in the parking area. And through this, we realized that with being in a Los Angeles business, it was so vital to have some outdoor dining space. And we've also tacked that on into the current plans. That was a new, interesting development that we didn't know when we first initiated this project. But I want to thank you for the time, and please support our project. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So we'll dive deeper into the design now. The proposed project enables the preservation of Taix French Restaurant for the next generation. It adds 166 apartments above that ground floor retail. 24 of those apartments are for very low income. Along the ground floor is approximately 13,000 square feet of retail space running Sunset, and the new pedestrian paseo. This pedestrian paseo is a public space. It creates the opportunity for connections between Sunset Boulevard and Reservoir behind. And this new project better integrates with the surrounding uses. It's a built environment that celebrates that this is the hub of Echo Park. So how did we get here? The design and the planning considerations. As Mike Taix alluded to, this process began in 2018. For the last 4 years, we have had the opportunity to meet and present and listen and adapt the design based on over a dozen different meetings and conversations with different stakeholders, neighbors, and community partners. These have included the Echo Park Neighborhood Council, who we have presented to multiple times, the Echo Park Improvement Association, who we've also had the opportunity to visit with a handful of times. The Echo Park Historic Society, Council District 13, they had a stakeholder design review process of local stakeholders who are professionals in architecture and design. We were able to present to them and elicit some very specific feedback. We've met with the Los Angeles Conservancy a couple times, as well as the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. And so over the years, the design has evolved as we have received input from these different groups. And we're really excited about where this final design has landed. It has taken into account all this commentary. And to further elaborate on the design, I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy Grant and Jim Dixon with AC Mark.
Thank you, Ryan. This is Jim Dixon with AC Mark. Echo in here, excuse me. So the current site is really this incredible site within Echo Park. It's located on a very central and pivotal part of Sunset Boulevard near the Glendale Boulevard undercrossing, where it intersects with Park Avenue and it affords this strong visual connection to the iconic Echo Park Lake down the hill. It really is main and main for Echo Park. And even though the building occupies this prominent position on Sunset Boulevard, it really underutilizes the potential of the site for more appropriately scaled and community-oriented development. The current restaurant is this anomaly of an auto-oriented suburban style and kind of fortress-like restaurant that is set into a stark parking lot. There's none of the more pedestrian-friendly storefront pattern that is seen in other parts of Echo Park and creates an unfortunate gap in the streetscape. Even though the restaurant use is really well loved by the community, I love going there. There's so much more that can be done on this site to enhance the streetscape, open space, and pedestrian connectivity of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So this is about the design evolution, and as Ryan alluded to, this has been over several years with a lot of different community stakeholders, and it has evolved into, based on that, it has evolved into what we currently have, which is a well thought out and well received response to this site and this location in Echo Park. So the first design on the left, Holland was willing to keep portions of the existing restaurant building, and in this iteration, we salvaged and reinserted various portions of the existing building into a collage of forms to complement those remaining portions of the existing Taix restaurant. The feedback we received is that this existing building was, in reality, not that special, and that more focus on open space, pedestrian connectivity, and so within the neighborhood, and an edgy contemporary style would really be much more desirable. Went back to the drawing board, and in response to those suggestions, the second design in the middle eliminated the existing building, but relocated the restaurant use to contemporary, forward-thinking looking building with the north-south facade, providing the open space connectivity and central hub the site needed and the stakeholders desired. The Paseo was a hit, but the input from the stakeholders was really the craft design that was really more about Echo Park. So the third and final scheme on the right enhances the Paseo, but really takes a more contextual approach with cues from the neighborhood that really speaks to Echo Park. And Jeremy will provide a few more details on this approach in the subsequent slides.
Hey, thanks, Jim. I'm very familiar with the community, having spent a lot of time and lived in the area. So in leading the design team, I felt that understanding the social and architectural context of Echo Park was essential in creating the design. Knowing the art and the music and dining social interaction on the street on Sunset Boulevard, it's set in a familiar backdrop of Southern California eclectic architectural styles like industrial, mid-century, modern. It's a whole host of different styles, and these styles are melded in a comfortable and satisfying set of details. And we sought to bring those recognizable aspects of Echo Park into our project and best mesh it into the community. We also sought to give a unique character to the buildings and highlighting the vantage points and breaking the block down to reflect the adjacent densities, heights, and common street datums. Doing so, we highlight the pedestrian access, the through Paseo, and activate all the street frontages. And it solves for some of the drawbacks of the existing site. And we work to give the facade a contextually relevant hierarchy, as you see below here, and we pay close attention to the common patterns and typologies of the local residential and commercial buildings. Along Sunset Boulevard, the intent is a very more formal approach, taking cues from the more traditional, well-aged local buildings, the buildings that and well, it's a little bit busy away from the busy frontage of Sunset Boulevard. The architecture, it starts to tone down to a less formal approach, picking up on the patterning of the neighborhood and the architectural elements and details we love. We work to create a set of these typologies for each massing, and it reinforces the surrounding context of the community that's been built over time. The Sunset Boulevard design, it's intentionally relevant, and it's in an architectural tradition that emphasizes the scale and proportion, hierarchy. In doing so, we accentuate for maximum street interaction along the retail frontage, and it drives the pedestrian experience in and the resident experience out, emphasizing the project's service as a community hub. In contrast, the Reservoir Street facade, it gives a quieter and more residential feel with endearing elements such as residential stoops, building entries, and these soften the facade, and it reflects on its immediate architectural contracts. While defining the through connection to the Paseo, the mass there is broken into a collection of familiar typologies. Another view here is along Sunset Boulevard, adjacent to the library. It allows the building to really engage and provide that familiar backdrop in the public open spaces and street frontages, and it enhances the series of connected pedestrian interactions around the project. The overall intent is to use the contextual design to reinforce the sense of the eclectic Echo Park community through careful and considerate use of architectural detail and treatment. And doing so, we hope to give rise to an energetic community hub of dining, shopping, and much needed residential housing for the neighborhood here at Echo Park. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeremy. And so just one more shot, looking down from above, highlighting the common area rooftop decks. This will be the outdoor space for the 166 units for the residents. Gardens, seating areas, club rooms that are inside outdoor spaces, and of course all of this overlooking Echo Park Lake and the skyline beyond, downtown skyline beyond. Also the connectivity better highlighted from this vantage point, both the connection to the library and also the central pedestrian Paseo through. As we jump down into the main pedestrian Paseo, there's an opportunity for outdoor dining. As Mr. Taix mentioned, the move to outdoor dining when the pandemic hit has made this design feature all the more relevant today for their continued success. And so the pedestrian Paseo creates an opportunity for outdoor dining that is off of a busy Sunset Boulevard, that is not within a surface parking lot, and is a really exciting feature of this new restaurant. The walls are operable so that they can open to have a flow of indoor-outdoor feel. Inside, This is from the front door off of Sunset Boulevard. You walk into the bar space. This is the bar top that is currently in the lounge and is being salvaged and reinstalled here, as well as looking to some items that help evoke the sense of what the current Taix interiors look like, including the faux tin ceilings, the light fixtures. And as we walk into the back room here, into the darker, more dimly lit dining space, the Pullman booths and the patinaed mirrors, light fixtures, the tin ceilings, things that help evoke the current sense of the space. And this was really part of the discussion with patrons and local stakeholders over the years, was the sense of what made Taix an important place for them. And a great deal of time and effort was spent with the Taix family and an interior designer laying out this new efficient, approximately 5,000 square foot space with indoor, outdoor dining, and really celebrating the parts of their business that the customer base currently enjoys and utilizes. Here's a nighttime shot of what it might look like down the pedestrian paseo. Here's the Taix outdoor dining, nicely lit, nice quiet place to spend a summer evening. So I'm going to hand it off now to Mr. Abchez, who's going to dive into the zoning and entitlement overview.
Good morning, Mr. Netburn, persons participating by Zoom in this hearing. My name is Alan Abchez. I'm very excited to be part of the Taix Square project. As Mr. Netburn, as you mentioned, this is a project site that has a base residential density of 110 units. And I think the best way for everyone to understand the entitlements being requested is that this site is designated for Tier 3 treatment under the city's transit-oriented communities program, and it would ordinarily be processed as a Tier 3 TOC project, but for the fact that this is being proposed as a mixed-use building so as to accommodate the retention and preservation of Taix French Restaurant. So let me review that for you. The project is proposing to set aside approximately 14% of its total apartment units for very low-income housing. And the entitlements being requested are equivalent to those that would be ministerially granted for a Tier 3 TOC project, except for the fact that this project, because it's mixed use, requires a waiver of the 3-story limitation that applies to the site as a mixed-use building, but would not apply to the site as an all-residential building. Accordingly, that waiver and the equivalent Tier 3 TOC entitlements for the conditional use and density bonus process. What are those requests? Those are essentially all the requests that are equivalent to what would be awarded for a Tier 3 TOC project. A 51% density bonus, although the project would be entitled to a 70% bonus by virtue of its 14% set aside. 2.75 FAR to 1 FAR, 0.5 residential parking ratio, 22-foot height increase, reduced side yards that are equivalent to RAS3 side yards, 25% reduced open space. All of those would be mandated by as part of the TOC project process, rather. But because we need this additional waiver of the 3-story limitation that applies to mixed-use buildings, we're proceeding by way of the conditional use and density bonus process. The project's also being considered for adoption of a sustainable communities project exemption by the city council. We believe that exemption is appropriate because the project meets all the requirements for a sustainable communities project exemption. Specifically, Taix Square will be a transit priority project. It is consistent with the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy adopted by the Southern California Association of Governments and the California Air Resources Board. The project will meet all of the environmental and land use criteria that are required for a sustainable Sustainable Communities Project exemption, and the project will provide significantly more affordable housing than required for a Sustainable Community Project exemption. Specifically, the Sustainable Communities Project exemption requires a minimum of 5% very low income set aside, and the project will provide 14% very low income set aside. And the centerpiece of the project is, and its core objective is to enable the preservation of Taix French Restaurant while making better use of the project site. And a lot of consideration has been given by the city to looking into Taix French Restaurant as a historic resource. And specifically, when the project was announced, Silver Lake Heritage Trust filed an application to have Taix French Restaurant designated as a historical cultural monument by the city of Los Angeles. And the city then conducted extensive proceedings extending from 2019 to this year to investigate and make a determination of how to best preserve Taix French Restaurant. And we've submitted to you not only the city council's action in that regard, but also the transcript of the commission hearings where the commission conducted an extensive investigation. And what came out of this is that the importance of Taix French Restaurant as a historic resource is not found in its structure, it's not found in its design, but it's found in its nature as a continuing legacy business. So here I have, I'm presenting to you an excerpt from the transcript of the commission's dialogue, Cultural Heritage Commission that is, when it considered this, noting that what's significant about Taix is that it's a legacy business, that every effort should be made by the city to save the business, and recognition by President Barron of the Cultural Heritage Commission that the restaurant has evolved over time, and this is time for another evolution of the restaurant. The commission specifically looked at the issue of whether the architecture and interior of the restaurant are significant as historic resources and rejected that argument. And here's a discussion of the commission rejecting the idea that the interior, which is about 25 years old, was significant, or that the architecture of the restaurant was significant. The Cultural Heritage Commission also understood that what was being proposed was to provide new premises for Taix Restaurant to enable its continuation. The plans that are before you for the restaurant and for the project were submitted to the commission when it conducted its hearings, and the commission acknowledged that what was being proposed was to continue the restaurant in new premises to enable its continuation. So here's a snippet of the dialogue between the commissioners confirming that this is what they expected would happen. The commission, of course, recommended that the restaurant be designated as a resource, but not for its art, not its building, and not its interior. And the city council adopted the recommendation of the commission and made an express finding that the restaurant building and its interior and exterior architecture and decor are not architecturally or historically significant. The city council went on to find that change is necessary to enable the preservation of restaurants. Specifically, the council found, is highlighted in yellow here, preservation of the Taix French Restaurant as a historical cultural resource and legacy business requires that it be able to respond to economic and social challenges that compel changes in its current physical premises. The Los Angeles Times agreed in an editorial published about the commission's consideration of the historical monument issue. The editorial board of the Times opined that this should be an easy choice. There's no point in preserving the cutesy faux French shell of Taix if the restaurant goes out of business. There are ways for the city to serve the interests of both preservation and progress, and this is exactly what the Taix Square project will do. In addition to the city council and the cultural heritage consideration of this issue, an expert report was prepared on the subject at the request of the city attorney's office. The report was prepared by GPA Consulting, whose expert historians meet the standards of the Secretary of Interior for historic preservation. And the GPA report confirmed that the Taix Restaurant building and its interior are not architecturally or historically significant. They documented that the restaurant, as Mr. Taix has explained, has demonstrated the ability over the years to change repeatedly while successfully retaining its identity as a legacy business. again, some photographs you've seen before of Taix French Restaurant's original premises in 1927. The project site, and you can see the evolution, the additional buildings that were added to expand Taix Restaurant over the year to its current size. And on the right, the Taix Square project, the new premises proposed on the pedestrians. One of the things that's important to consider here is that, and is really essential in this case, is that the nature of the resource. And as the GPA report documented, traditional historic preservation techniques and resources are not necessarily adequate to preserve legacy businesses. What are legacy businesses? Legacy businesses are resources that are important for their intangible qualities to the community. They're beloved institutions, but they're not necessarily because of their architecture or design, but because of their presence and their long-term service to the community. As noted in the GPA report, traditional historic preservation protections are often ill-suited to address the challenges facing cultural heritage assets, such as Taix Restaurant, as outlined by Mr. Taix, and the business challenges that his family has been facing. And the GPA report noted that depending on the goals and motivations, preservation organizations have recognized that in some circumstances, it may be appropriate to prioritize the continuation of traditional uses over the protection of the buildings that house them. So in conclusion, the GPA report found that the Taix Square restaurant would preserve the location, feeling, and association of Taix French Restaurant as a legacy business, and that the Taix project would not cause an impact to Taix French Restaurant as a historical resource. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Advent. So in conclusion of our presentation, I'd like to reiterate that the project design enhances and improves the community fabric, both at the immediate level of Sunset Boulevard, but within the larger context of Echo Park. This project provides affordable housing in place of what is currently an underutilized surface parking lot. This project supports the council's adoption of the Skippy, and the beginning goal of all of this project preserves a legacy business and a historic resource. Thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you so much. Very informative. So at this time, I'm going to take some public testimony. So as I indicated previously, if you're on the Zoom, it's as easy as pressing the raise hand button, just like we're all in school. Or if you're on your phone, you can press *9 and that'll do the same thing, raise your hands. And so our planning staff will know that you wish to speak. I'll give you a couple of seconds, well, not a couple of seconds, I'll give you a little bit more time to start to raise your hands, which I see we got a population of. And then we will begin to take the calls. And as I indicated, obviously, a couple of things. One, I'll afford you maybe not the full half hour that the applicant took, but the time that you need to speak. If a caller before you says something effectively that is the same as what you wish to say, you can sort of put your stamp of approval on there on the previous caller's speaker's comments, so as we don't have to reiterate some of the same concerns or statements, comments that other people have made. As well, also, although I know this will be difficult, and I'm not going to prevent anyone from speaking on behalf or with regards to the Skippy. The Skippy is being handled, being processed, being reviewed and considered by our city council. As I indicated previously, there's a council file number, which is council file 22-050257. Let me just confirm that. 0297 is the council file number. And again, if you wish to be part of the interested parties for that council file number and consideration by the city council of the Skippy, you can let me know your email and email and address, and I will get those over to the council city clerk so that you can be notified of any upcoming hearings. But with that, I just wanted to iterate that, what we will be considering, what I'm going to be recommending to the City Planning Commission, and what the City Planning Commission is going to be deliberating and acting on is not the Skippy. That'll be a decision made by the City Council and the City Council alone. We are considering the entitlements here, which are the density bonus, the conditional use for increased density, the main conditional use for 5 alcohol establishments, and the site plan review. So with that, if planning staff, you can begin to, I see, just so everyone knows, I see 8 people who have raised their hands. Again, if you wish to speak, press *9 or just raise your hand button in the app. And with that, planning staff, you can begin to call the individuals.
Los Angeles Conservancy, please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Adrian Scott Fine with the Los Angeles Conservancy. In regards to the off-menu density bonus and conditional use approvals being sought by the applicant through the City Planning Commission, we are not opposed in concept. However, approval does require discretionary review by the city and directly affects the overall project scope and an existing historic resource, the Taix Restaurant building. And while a sustainable communities project exemption, or SCIPI, is being considered by the City Council separately, these 2 approval processes are directly linked and should be treated as a whole by the city. Despite the City Council's action regarding the historic cultural monument process, this project will have a significant impact on the historic resource, i.e. demolishing the historic Taix building, a demonstrated identified historic resource by a preponderance of the evidence already submitted in the city record, thus preventing reliance on SCIPI to avoid CEQA review. Through these requests for approvals, we caution the city not to pre-commit to a specific project or scope prior to commencing environmental review and preparation of an environmental impact report required by California CEQA law, given there is an adverse significant impact to a historic resource, the demolition of the historic Taix Restaurant building. Other historic resources like Taix are being retained through full or partial preservation approaches by integrating compatible surrounding infill construction. The same is readily possible here, and an EIR will help demonstrate this by assessing preservation alternatives to the proposed project. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. That was a little confusing. Hi, I'm calling to ask that the Planning Commission require an EIR, an environmental impact report per CEQA for this project. To not bypass it, there, as Adrian just said, there is significant adverse impacts on an historic structure, and it requires it. And I'm going to remind everyone, go look at Dinah's down near the airport. Really great use for preserving an existing historic structure and integrating new construction around it. So please don't decouple with the Skippy and getting a bypass on the EIR and getting these entitlements separately. Let's keep it honest and straight, and just go down the line and get a review and do the right thing. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The very mayor, please unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm just a neighborhood resident. I'm strongly in favor of this. My dad lives 1 block and doesn't drive. He'll love waiting for the bus in front of a thriving mixed-use building instead of a sea of cars. He'll love walking through the Paseo to Reservoir. I'm super, as a person who lives nearby myself, and I'm like painfully squeezed by rents, increasing the housing situation, to me is like the most biggest boon of this project, but it's also fantastic in terms of pedestrian friendliness, a more attractive cityscape. I don't understand the architectural preservation argument because it does not seem to me very architecturally significant. And if like the soul of the project is the restaurant in the body of the restaurant of the building, it's like you're asking something impossible, which is to make a businessman operate a business in like a building that doesn't support that business, whereas you could keep the restaurant in this new form. To me, it seems like we just need more of this, and like the more you can expedite this process and not have it get caught up in like all the millions of different hurdles that buildings face to get built, I strongly, just as a citizen and member of the neighborhood, support it.
Thank you.
Calling user 4, please unmute yourself.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Some corrections to the, first, my name is Jen. Some corrections to the facts must be made as the applicants have misled the hearing officer. First, the applicants have neglected to inform the hearing officer that they have been sued over this case, as has the city, and that this case is currently in litigation in Los Angeles Superior Court. Second, applicants say they have quote unquote worked with community stakeholders. However, they do not say who. Community stakeholders have repeatedly opposed this project. One example is seen in the change.org petition, which collected 4,892 supporters to designate the historic resource that the Cultural Heritage Commission did conclude was a historic resource. The applicant's own historical report that they had prepared by Ms. Catherine McGee in 2019, page 9 states that it is presumed to be historically and culturally significant, and therefore the Taix Restaurant appears to qualify as a historic resource under CEQA. Third, the applicant significantly erred by omitting a section of the transcript that's kind of material, whereas Commissioner Kennard at the Cultural Heritage Commission in December stated, and I quote, "The argument that we only designate the site doesn't make sense. We have to either designate or not. I am not really persuaded by the business argument. I think that the building itself meets the criteria. It's a legacy building. So the business part of it is out of our expertise. If this owner can't make a go of it, potentially there are other owners who can come in. It's not our decision. We need to look at the criteria." And then the DCP replied, pulling the applicants back, letting them know that, quote, "We need to go back to the criteria and whether the property meets the criteria. Future plans is outside the purview of this commission." The city's cultural, end quote. The city's cultural heritage ordinance, section 22171.7, describes the criteria one must meet in order to be designated a historic cultural monument in the city. Not a single mention of legacy business is in that criteria. There is certainly currently, no process that the city has. There is currently no program that the city has for a nomination, let alone designation, of a legacy business. The Cultural Heritage Commission made their findings and were clear that that cannot be an option to designate. Fourth, the Echo Park Neighborhood Council has gone on record more than once stating they do not support this project. Fifth, this proposal does not qualify as a SCIPI for previous reasons and spoken already that I don't need to repeat, but just to remind the hearing officer that the project does demolish a historic resource. And another important finding is that the courts have found that, quote unquote, salvage items, and this is in published cases, salvaged items do not constitute historic resources, that the entire container is considered the historic resource. There are multiple ways to incorporate a new approach and the use of text by working with the residents and working with the actual constituents, voters, residents of the city, which Holland Partners are not. And if they would just be open to those discussions, I do believe that a win-win can be met. I apologize. I went over my time, so I appreciate you allowing me to complete my submission. Thank you.
I was going to, in fact, comment on how quick all of you have been. I appreciate your consideration. So whatever time you guys need to make your presentation, I'm willing to listen and have you speak what you need to. Anyway, can we get on to the next caller? Thank you.
Charles Fisher, please unmute yourself.
Yes, good morning. I'm Charlie Fisher. I wrote the original application for the designation of the Taix Restaurant. What I called out for designation was, of course, the building. Now, obviously, as monuments exist, buildings are altered that are monuments. The building's too large. I can agree with that. I think this project is certainly a doable project, but I do believe that more of this building should be preserved. Obviously, the facade is an important aspect of the building. It has been a monument along Sunset Boulevard for over half a century. Going back to the presentation that was made, this was the first time I actually ever saw that original design presentation, and I was told that a lot of people hated it. I personally thought it was certainly something that would be a start to be doable on this preservation. I want to call attention also to the commentary that was presented about the Cultural Heritage Commission. Very cherry-picked. In fact, Jennifer, I think, has already alluded to a lot of that, so I won't get into that. I will point out, though, that the LA City does not have any sort of ordinance for a legacy business at this point. The building was designated, the entire building was designated by the commission. The cutting it down to 2 signs, one of which was never even called out in the application. The cocktail sign is a very generic sign, and the bar top itself is not a designation. It is a salvage. I recall a designation request years ago for Yimi Lu down in Chinatown, where they were trying to do a very similar thing, and the commission at that time said, no, we're not designating just pieces of an interior. This is not what the commission does. The commission designated the building, and that is what we are pushing for. I do applaud the choice of architect here. I'm very impressed with A.C. Martin's work over the years. I did the nomination on the Water and Power building, which of course is an A.C. Martin as well. But I do also believe that A.C. Martin has the ability to design a project that can incorporate the facade and the important frontal interior spaces of the Taix Restaurant. I think this is a doable project, and it needs to be worked. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next caller.
Number ending in 6727, please unmute yourself.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I am calling in support of the redevelopment project at 1911 Sunset Boulevard, a timely project that will help save Taix Spur much-needed housing stock and activate a beloved community corridor. For 95 years, Taix has been a staple of the community for decades, and without the thoughtful modernization efforts, Taix would not be able to save the jobs of their employees, revitalize their operations, and stay in business. Taix deserves the city community support to ensure it can continue to operate for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number ending in 4161, please unmute yourself.
Hello. Hello, this is Daniel Paul, architectural historian. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I worked on the Taix nomination with Charlie Fisher, and I just want to say a couple of comments about this nomination and again, some of the past information. Cultural Heritage Commission approved this as a historical cultural monument under Criterion 1 for broad social significant events associated with the history of Taix. In order for a property to be eligible under that criteria, you need not have perfect design significance or integrity. They specifically called out the stylish, dimly lit dining spaces, basically the continental dining theming, as the primary character defining feature for their finding of eligibility under criterion 1. This is a continental dining theming that was continued by the Taix family through the 1990s, and it is still present. So those are the character defining features of the property as an eligible historical resource. As other speakers have mentioned, that's questionable for CEQA in terms of avoiding significant impact. There's a lot of legal questions around that. And also, I just want to say that I worked with Silver Lake Heritage Trust on this. Nobody is opposed to building taller and thinner on the property in the broad parking lot to allow for all kinds of housing in a manner that would save the building and its primary character defining features, which are still beloved and still speak. And so I encourage your commission to consider the option of a taller and thinner build option, which would allow for housing, which may cost more money for the developer and the applicant, but could save this resource, which the Conservancy has mentioned is a historical resource for the purposes of CEQA. Those are my comments for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Phone number ending in 8350. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, hi, my name is Cecilia Gutierrez, and I'm pleased to support the redevelopment project at 1911 Sunset Boulevard to ensure we save legal business and continue to house our neighbors in need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Hay, please unmute yourself.
Hey. Can you guys hear me?
Only just if you could speak up a little bit louder.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem.
So I'm a longtime Taix customer since 2006, 17-year Echo Park resident, approximately 30-year employee working in Silver Lake. I've seen the de-evolution of traffic. It's really offensive that they're casting this incredible overbuilt kind of, I want to say, generic monstrosity is with the density bonus modifications of putting 160 units in. They're casting it as a way to preserve this historic business, Taix, when in fact, if they tore down Taix, it would only be 110 units. I mean, again, we love Taix. We'd love to keep going there. We know that Mike Taix sold out a few years ago, kind of cashed out to do this project and then became a partner in it. But when I see the fact that basically it takes a half hour to get from Silver Lake, let's say Hillhurst to Echo Park Avenue on a busy day, it's only going to get worse with another 160 units. There's no space for this. And if you think a half a parking space is going to do for, who can afford these apartments? How much are they? And do you think somebody who's going to buy sort of a brand new apartment on Sunset Boulevard isn't going to want a car and there's only a half a space of parking for these people? It's really absurd. But mainly it's offensive that the presentation was casting this as sort of like, hey, we're doing this good thing, preserving this historical business, but they're actually doing that just so they can get 50 more units in there. It's all about money, obviously. Again, anybody just looking at this can read between the lines effortlessly. It's going to basically, this Taix is sort of like a wonderful open space that you walk by or drive by. There's like everywhere in Echo Park is getting destroyed. going up Echo Park Avenue, like nothing but mixed use apartments. And it's just like encroaching on the skyway. You can't see the sky anymore walking up these streets. And you know, the traffic is hideous, especially let's just like wait another month and it's going to be baseball season and you won't be able to like drive anywhere here. Anyway, I know I'm ranting and I apologize for that, but basically, if there's a way to like preserve part of the building and have fewer units, that might be okay, but it's all about a money grab here. So anyway, thank you and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Mark McRae, please unmute yourself.
I went off a little bit. I don't know. Everyone else had their line.
Hello, Mark, are you there? Do we want to let's put Mark back in the hold, and then we'll call on him again in shortly. It looks like we have one more caller, and so we can try and get back to Mark.
Aloha Lima, please unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. I just want to say that I agree with Brian Haw. I'm a neighborhood resident. I've lived here for 25 years. I honestly don't know how they got these residents or other people to call in, read their little script and show support, because nobody I know who lives in this neighborhood supports this project. I don't think this is any of the options are attractive for the neighborhood. We have constantly been pushed out of this area and not taken into account when new projects are being approved. And I'm also offended that this project is being under the guise of providing low-income housing when we already know it is a money grab. There is absolutely no respect for the community or preserving historic resources. And we already have similar Spanish-style modern buildings down Sunset near Grand that have a lot of availability. So it's not that there isn't enough housing. We already know that the issue is that there's going to be too much unaffordable housing, and I agree with what Brian said. It is offensive that they're putting it under that. I want to say that we need to prepare an environmental impact report, an EIR, for this project. And that is all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And then let's see if we can try and get Mark back on.
Mark McRae, please unmute yourself.
Hello, Mark. Give you a couple more chances, and then we will move on. Well, sounds like I'm not sure what's happened to our friend Mark, but he will be able to provide me any kind of testimony he wishes to after this call. And so, but for right now, let me see, there's two Marks. So let's see if the other, I see two Marks here. Let me see if this other Mark. Okay, well, all right. Well, looks like as indicated, if you'd like to, and I could reach out to him. He sent me an email earlier. And so, Mark, are you there? Going once? Going twice? And I'll follow up with him. He sent me an email so I can follow up with him and find out whatever comments he had and make sure that he is able to get it into the record. So with that, I will invite the applicant back up. And please note, Mr. Applicant, I know that there was a lot of the comments that were provided were with regards to the Skippy in the historic cultural monument status. As I indicated, that's not what is before us today. course, you'll respond to it. But I would ask that you respond to it in brief, as primary focus of our hearing today and what will be of concern to our city planning commission is going to be the TPC case entitlements, density bonus conditional use, site plan review, main conditional use. Before we do though, let me quickly, I see a hand was raised. And so if we can try and see if that person, that might be Mark, it might be a new Mark, 8619. So if we can try and get that person, they may have pressed their hand unintentionally, but caller ending in 8619, you can unmute.
Okay. Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm having problems with my phone. This is Carol Citroni. I'm with the Silver Lake Heritage Trust. I just wanted to make a few quick comments.
Sure.
Contrary to hello.
Yes. Go ahead.
Contrary to the information in this presentation, this project is not about the preservation of our neighborhood historic resource. This project is actually the antithesis of preservation. And in this case, this is an extremely historic site. The Cultural Heritage Commission determined that the Taix building met the criteria of the Cultural Heritage Ordinance and is a historic resource. Enough people have spoken about this. I'm not going to go into details, but I wanted to mention that Taix was flagged in Survey LA, the citywide survey of historic resources. And this survey does not recognize legacy businesses. It's for the physical structure. And it was also recognized twice by the city of Los Angeles. City council even named the street in front of the restaurant Taix Square. There's an official Department of Transportation sign on the street there. And I'm glad one of the presenters mentioned the word salvage, because this is exactly what this is. It salvages 2 signs and a bar top in lieu of actual preservation, which, by the way, is a direct contradiction to the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, and which, by the way, those standards literally mention the pitfalls of salvage instead of actual preservation, and it runs against the goals of the Cultural Heritage Ordinance. The implication from your presentation is that there was support from neighborhood groups, but although the developers may have gotten feedback, the Echo Park Historical Society is not in support as currently proposed. The LA Conservancy is not in support, and their feedback and the feedback of my organization, the Silver Lake Heritage Trust, remains largely ignored. We object to the development as currently proposed and ask that a full environmental impact report be required. Consideration of this development as a SCIPI is improper due to the many environmental impacts. And I just want to say that we do believe there's a way to create the desired density here. Somebody mentioned Dinah's, which is an amazing example. We presented our ideas to Holland partners, and they, by the way, have an impressive experience with adaptive reuse. I know that they can do this. We believe there's a viable and an exciting way forward that could provide a win-win for all parties, but it requires open, creative thinking and an extra commitment to our community. You know, they're going to be our neighbors. We live here. I'm a long time resident of this neighborhood. So they need a little extra commitment to be open-minded about what it will take to create a situation that we can all be happy with. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we got more people calling in. You want to call on, I think it's Luke.
Luke Clip, please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Luke Klipp. I'm a resident of Los Feliz, just a couple miles up the road. I've lived in our community for over a decade. I've been involved in my neighborhood council, including serving several years as the president of the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council. I'm here as a resident, as a constituent, as someone who is very passionate and cares a great deal about our community and folks' ability to live and work in our community, for businesses to survive and thrive in our community. And I'm calling in support of this project as presented today. I mean, I just heard the last caller asking about open and creative thinking, and watching the presentation that we got earlier today, I was sort of struck by the amount of what I would consider to be open and creative thinking that was demonstrated in how the folks who are putting this together are thinking about how this knits into the community, how they reduce some of the impacts that folks would have generally concerns about around frontage in the street, and providing the walkthrough, or I guess they call it a paseo, and outdoor dining. I mean, these are the sorts of things that frankly we don't see that much of in a lot of projects that would be similar to this. And what we're, for me, at the end of the day, what matters even more than any of that is that this is a project that will create new housing, and especially create housing for what are considered very low income households without a single public dime making that happen. And I think that's pretty significant and meaningful, that we're talking about something that will both create new housing, new affordable housing, and for those of us who care about Taix, will create a path for Taix to continue to survive and thrive in our community. Frankly, I'm excited to see this happen. I hope it will happen, and want to just thank Taix and the proponents of this project for the work and the time that you have put into this, the amount of conversations you've engaged with our communities on this. And I just want to support, I'm just calling here to support this project. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. So with that, I guess let me first I'll let the applicant. Sorry, let me take that off so people can hear my real voice. Like I'm oh, never mind. Oh, big anyway, if the applicant, I'll let the applicant provide a brief response to some of the comments that were made, and then I may have some questions about the project that I'd like to have answered or get answers to prior to us going to City Planning Commission. So with that, yeah.
I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Abshes to answer a handful of them. But before I do, I would just like to reiterate that were it not for the mixed-use development that we're pursuing here, where the ground floor is retail and the preservation, the ongoing operation of Taix French Restaurant were to occur, were it not for a mixed-use development, if this were purely residential project, we would be applying essentially through a ministerial process through something that has already been approved citywide. This is a TOC Tier 3 project, and so some of the concerns about density and parking counts and the size of this project. This project is a TOC Tier 3 project, were it not for that mixed use item. So I just want to clarify that. We do have 220 parking stalls in 2 levels of subterranean parking, which are more than the 0.5 that are being noted by some of the callers. I think in terms of the commissioner comments and the Skippy and any pending litigation, Mr. Abshes, if you'd like to respond to some of those comments.
I believe that Jennifer mentioned that her organization is suing the city. That is not a challenge to the project. That's a challenge to the the city council's planning and land use management Brown Act compliance. When the Plum Committee took up the recommendation of the city council, it conducted a Zoom hearing, and we're on now, and various members, persons who wanted to participate, were not called upon to testify. And a Brown Act lawsuit was brought to challenge that. By the way, the applicant was also not called upon to testify that day. So there was a mechanical error that occurred, and this had nothing to do with the project's merits or any challenge to the project's merits. Regarding all these statements that are made about what the commission decided, what the commission recommended, of course, the commission made a recommendation to the city council. The city council took the final action, but I believe we've accurately represented what the commission recommended. There is a transcript of the commissioner's proceedings. The commission did not find that the architecture or the interior of the restaurant were significant. The commission did not find that continental dining theming was central to the restaurant. The commission did anticipate that Taix was going to be continued in new premises. The plans for the project were put before the commission. City staff recommended that the commission not discuss those plans, but they were presented, and the commission was aware that the project was proceeding in this manner. And I think it's greatly ironic that those who are speaking in terms advocating for preservation are missing the central point, which is that the Taix French Restaurant cannot continue in its current premises. And so that the institution that's beloved by the community could not continue if the current premises remain. And that's been repeatedly expressed to you by the owners and operators of the restaurant, and that they're seeking a solution to enable the resource to continue. And that's precisely what we're struggling with here, and what the LA Times editorial spoke about. And what, in other words, that preserving the shell is essentially preserving the body while condemning the soul of the business. I believe that the billionaire recognized the soul of the business is what's being recognized as important, and the project is trying to find a way to preserve the business, which has existed in many forms over the years, first downtown in a different dining format in a different location. Later, as Mr. Taix explained, came to Silver Lake. This business has had a continuity and continues today. And what we're trying to do is to enable that resource, which is what's known as a legacy business, to continue. And of course, this is not a unique idea. So we presented to you some quotes from leading preservation organizations recognizing that traditional preservation tools, such as preserving a building or insisting it be preserved, are not necessarily up to the task of preserving what is in fact the historic resource. And that's the case of legacy businesses. So I guess I should also add that the city's cultural heritage ordinance doesn't mention legacy businesses, but it does not insist that legacy businesses are not a resource to be preserved. And that's exactly what's being sought here and what was recommended by the Cultural Heritage Commission and adopted by the City Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abchez. And staff, in conclusion to responses, we have over the last 3.5, 4 years engaged with many different groups, many different stakeholders. And not everybody has the same opinion. Not everybody has the same conclusion. We are very excited and feel very confident about the current design, taking into account the best we can, balancing all the different opinions that we can. Some stakeholders feel very passionately about preserving the facade on Sunset Boulevard. Other users feel even more passionate about the inclusion of a public pedestrian paseo through the site. Unfortunately, we are not able to accommodate everybody's request in the designs. It is not a large enough site, and there are so many design programming requirements that we must meet. And so we did hear a lot of folks from the historic preservation community today, and the original design that we started with that was shown in this presentation today was shown to the LA Conservancy, Echo Park Historic Conservancy, as well as the neighborhood groups. And not everybody found that design to be appealing. The direction the team was given was to go back to the drawing board. And so although some members of the community may feel passionate about that specific item, others are very excited about the new public space that's being created, as well as the opportunity for some off-street public dining space. So I appreciate that not every single stakeholder got everything they wanted through that dialogue over the last 3.5 or 4 years. Nonetheless, this is a wonderful project, beautifully designed, that is going to enhance the experience for business owners, visitors, and new residents to Echo Park. And we're really excited to build this and be a part of Echo Park for the long term.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Hold on, just because I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak. Jackie, looks like you raised your hand.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. While I am not part of this direct community, I am a member of LA and I've been growing up here my entire life. I do not support this project for one reason alone. I have seen what happens in other communities that I do live in, not just in my personal neighborhood, but other neighborhoods adjacent to myself. And what ends up happening is not the fact that this building goes up, whether people can afford it or not, is it never gets filled. And people end up actually leaving the neighborhood altogether because a building of this nature goes up. I've seen it happen so many times. So that is why I'm not in support of this, because I see the long-term effect of what will happen as opposed to the immediate cash grab this building does, because my experience also dealing with lawsuits has seen what happens to these buildings when they go up. Residents leave, and then actually the property value ends up going down in the long term, and no one benefits from this. So that is my personal experience, along with what I have seen both big picture and in the immediate.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Back up muted. I muted myself. You guys don't want to hear me talk. Oh, hold on. Still got more people to speak. So Stephanie.
Hi, so I live in the neighborhood and I don't support this project at all. There has been constant apartment complexes being built around the area. They're not even full. No one can even afford them. The original community of Echo Park is not what they're trying to build. And they keep pushing this community further out. And places like the restaurant are places where we had that still resembled the old community. And I just think it's really wrong to continue down this path of overdeveloping the sunset nature of the street into just fully modern apartment buildings. Like, no one wants that in the neighborhood. I don't know anybody who does.
Thank you so much for your comment as well. I appreciate everyone's comments here. I hope that everyone feels like they've, excuse me, let me do that again. I hope that everyone feels like they've been afforded an opportunity to speak. I just wanted to follow up with a couple of questions for the applicant's team. You have an entitlement request for alcohol establishments. And so I was just curious, I believe when I look at your plans, you have four locations for retail, including restaurant spaces. And so I was just wondering, currently your application, I believe, has 5 premises. I may not have the most current plans that are available, but can you provide a little bit of clarity as to, at least at this point, the number of licenses that you would be looking for, off-site, on-site, restaurants,
so
full line, beer, wine.
Sure. So overall, we're proposing right around 13,000 square feet of ground floor retail. And that essentially is everything that fronts Sunset Boulevard and the pedestrian paseo that isn't being utilized by the curb cut for ingress egress or for residential lobby entrance or for other back of house uses. So that 13,000 square feet, Taix would like approximately 5,000 square feet of it. And so the balance of those spaces may be demised into smaller restaurants, given who the user may be. And at this time, we don't know who that user may be for those other spaces. So to be conservative, there won't be more than 5. 5 would be the most, given the configuration of the spaces, which is the rationale for that value. Does that help clarify?
Yeah. And so at this point, they would you'd be requesting for all of them to be full line.
The ability for them to be, and again, at this point in time, we don't know who the final user will be.
Right. I get that. Right. But you may have offsite. So you may have 5 offsite. I'm not saying you would, but you may have 5 offsite full line.
Potentially.
Right. Yeah. And then you have a request for 20-foot elevator shaft above the 67 feet. Is that the only thing that's above the 67 feet, or is that do you have other elements that are going to be above the 67 feet of height?
That is the only building element that is above that level, and the rationale for that is that the open space is up on the roof, and so the elevator stop goes to the roof, and the way that the elevators are constructed, there needs to be a little bit of an overrun because beyond the cab are the mechanics of the elevator. So that item.
Do you have are there stairhouse or stairwells that would be presumably going up to that level?
Yes, but not to that same height.
But you would need. I mean, the way in which it's asked of or described is that it's the only thing that's going above is the 67 feet for the elevator housing, but you would need, that's the maximum component, but there are other components that are going to be above the 67 feet.
We will need to comply with whatever code required access is necessary for the open space. And so stairs and elevators are the required circulation. Access control fences to ensure that folks are safe in their open space area, and appropriate screening around HVAC condensers. AC Martin, if you want to dive into further detail.
Yeah, so the code allows up to 10 feet above the maximum height, but the elevators have about a 16-foot overrun, and the elevators are provided because of ADA requirements to the open space. So in order for us to have the open space, we have to have elevators, and so it's sort of a catch-22. The elevators are really required for that specific element, and then all the other elements are below that 10-foot threshold, including the stairwells and the other mechanical equipment.
All right, we may just want to clarify building safety often. If there is an entitlement that's being sought, and the entitlement includes some restriction or allowances for building height, that the allowance, and then the exceptions that are provided for under 1221 1.1 B3, I believe it is. Those exceptions are not necessarily deemed to be applicable unless we sort of make a statement to the effect that they are still applicable. And so I think we will need to make sure that those exceptions are still applicable, with the additional exception that the elevator shaft would be, or elevator housing would be permitted up to a 20-foot height. So I think we'll just want to make sure that that's clear. With regards to the, I'm not unmuted. With regards to the driveway access, so there's only one driveway access that's off of Sunset Boulevard.
The current driveway cut is being reutilized.
Right, and there'll be are there any curb? A couple of things. Are there any curb cuts that are along the rear of the property? I guess you'd call it reservoir side.
Currently, there's not a change in the curb line.
No curb cuts.
No, there's no vehicular access from reservoir.
Okay. It looks like there will be. I mean, you have your loading over there, so it looks like you have a curb cut. I don't know if that's going to be a new curb cut, but it's just for loading space.
That's back of house retail
right.
Loading zone.
Right. Just because reservoir is currently has no cuts. It would be interesting to see if there's a possibility of getting. Well, it's gonna be back here. It's not a DWP thing. So never mind. Strike that. Strike my comment for the record. I was going to ask if it was simply for the transformer, but it's not. Transformers used so infrequently that having a curb cut specifically for that purpose would be maybe unnecessary. But it's for your loading of retail and other uses, and so those will be used potentially on a daily basis. And so at that point, you would need that curb cut there.
We could explore that. That area currently is a loading zone for Taix. It's the back of house for Taix.
Right. And then so the driveway along Sunset. So you're currently going to be reusing the intersection. Is that intersection going to be its lighting system going to be improved? The street, not the street lighting, but the traffic signaling, I guess you could call it. Is that going to be modified in order to accommodate? It's currently it's obviously an intersection, but it's an intersection that includes 25% of it is servicing a single restaurant, whereas now that intersection will be servicing obviously something much larger. So are there going to be enhancements to the intersection for turning, for timing, for pedestrians to get across the street?
So it's currently fully signalized. It's a four-way intersection, meaning that to exit that driveway today is a signalized event. We do have Ryan Kelly on the call, our traffic consultant, who can speak more to that. But the overarching conclusion of the traffic study was that no substantial impacts were being created with this redevelopment.
Yeah, and so I guess Ryan, if you can speak to, I guess my question is, right now, for argument's sake, you have 1 minute green light for east-westbound traffic on Sunset. You then have 1 minute for east or for northbound traffic on Park, and then, but obviously, people exiting Taix, they don't get the light doesn't sit there for a full minute to allow for people to exit Taix when you have only one car that's coming out. So presumably, the timing signals for the development may change, but maybe. But so if you could speak to that, and then also as well, the crosswalk there. I think I don't know how the pedestrian crosswalk operates today, but again, I mean, essentially, what exists there today, while it's a fully signalized four-way intersection, is really a three-way intersection. Taix is just not. I mean, it's signalized, but it's just not doesn't have the traffic that warrants any kind of great coordination with pedestrians and traffic. Whereas once this development comes to fruition, you will have potentially a number of cars coming in and out of that driveway. And so for pedestrians and vehicles, if there's any coordination, timing changes that would occur.
Ryan Kelly has his hand up if we want to promote him.
Ryan, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Yeah, so we did the traffic impact study a few years back on this project, and it was actually done when the previous DOT guidelines were in place, where LOS was the performance metric. We ended up doing a VMT analysis as well, supplementally, but in terms of the MOU, it was based on LOS, so we did an LOS analysis of the intersection and showed that even with the addition of project traffic, there would be no significant impact at the intersection of Park and Sunset. And that intersection is under the city's ATSAC ATCS system. So in terms of signal timing, it does respond in real time to traffic demands on the surface street network to adjust signal timing. So yeah, basically traffic coming off of the project driveway would end up getting, more green time due to the increase in vehicular trips.
Okay, and then so there would be no, and obviously I guess this would be developed over the course of time, but there's no intention of creating right hand or left hand turn priorities. And so I just don't know. I'm just trying to think of the intersection now, and I don't know if there is a left hand turn lane for Taix. So if you're headed westbound, we'll call it westbound, at that point on Sunset, is there a left hand turn lane that's there? And would there be a need for the creation of one? Sorry, eastbound.
Eastbound, there is a left turn pocket.
There's a left turn pocket. It's not the it's not the emergency lane.
No, there's a left turn pocket both eastbound and westbound, and then the northbound Park Avenue approach has individual lanes for all of the movements: a left turn lane, a through lane, and a right turn lane. So the all the through traffic for the project would queue up in that one lane and not interfere with left turning and right turning traffic destined for Sunset Boulevard.
Right. Okay. And then last one, and I know this is kind of getting into far more detail and questioning about the traffic, but it just sort of struck me in this meeting to bring some of these questions up, just in terms of like pedestrian timing. I know now that many of the intersections that we have today, when a direction is about to be given the green light to go forward, the vehicles, there is a little bit of a lag where the pedestrian hand signal was given 3 seconds, 2 seconds to be green, so that allows for pedestrians to get into the crosswalk prior to the automobiles being able to begin their movements. And so I think the idea there is that if a pedestrian is in the crosswalk, there's the automobile will take them into consideration, whereas if they are both given the green at the same time and the pedestrian enters the crosswalk at the same time, if the automobile begins their movement, that the automobile may not see the pedestrian. I don't know what type of signaling they have here for pedestrians, but is there, again, if this project is, which is the hope and expectation, going to sort of bring a little bit more pedestrian activity to this intersection, and primarily I'm just thinking of the connection between the north side of Sunset to the south side of Sunset, given the attraction of the Echo Park further to the south along Park Avenue. Is there any consideration, or is all that sort of dealt with as the project is being built, and there's further communication with DOT?
Yeah, that's usually done further down the line. But I would agree, if that sort of pedestrian phasing hasn't been implemented, it'd be nice too. I think that right now they're just standard crosswalks out there, high visibility, continental style crosswalks would probably serve better as well. So yeah, those are the kinds of issues we'll deal with DOT down the line.
Right. And I think it's just, again, the project so far, what it sounds like. I mean, there was some concerns about, sort of the scale and scope of the project. I think much of the concerns were related to the preservation of the Taix Restaurant and the environmental clearance. Given that the project site, the project is fairly well articulated and activated at the ground floor, and sort of some of the major components of the project's team, or the project's goals as outlined by the team, are to enhance connectivity, pedestrian activity. I think this is, knowing Echo Park as I do, which is probably not as well as some of the other people on this phone call, but when you get east of Glendale, I would say you get into sort of more of the downtown historic Echo Park area. When you migrate further to the west, and you cross over Alvarado, and you get over to sort of the Mohawk area, you get sort of another strip of nice new revitalized type development. This area here is sort of the missing link, and I think if it's going to be a place where pedestrians want to walk, that we should try and address some of those concerns to the extent that the city can, with the public right-of-way improvements. Not necessarily saying dedications and improvements, things of that sort, but if there are, as you were saying, the signalization can be and should be modified, then this would be the time to do it. I'm going to let Aloha speak just quickly, as I know you spoke previously, but I again want to afford everyone an opportunity here. So Aloha, you can speak if you'd like. Oh, no, okay. I think she took her hand down. With that, as I indicated previously, this is just a hearing officer hearing, so I'm not rendering any decision. I'll be preparing a recommendation for our City Planning Commission for them to take under consideration. What they will be considering is the CPC action, the density bonus, the conditional use for above 35% density bonus, the main conditional uses, which we had a little brief conversation about today, in the site plan review. There's no scheduled hearing for that at this point, and so I cannot announce anything. So either if you can send me an email, which I see some of you have, if you want to be on the interested parties list, please let me know, and I can include you on the interested parties list. And so when we have a CPC hearing date scheduled, you would receive notice. That notice would be sent out 24 days prior to that hearing. Currently, I don't anticipate that hearing to be any time before the end of June, potentially the end of June, but more likely July. And that's also what we discussed is the City Council's actions with regards to the Skippy. That is not something that I handle directly. It's handled through our City Council and our City Clerk. However, if you wish to be a part of the interested parties list for that, again, please notify me and I can include you on that interested parties list. What I will basically do is, if you ask to be a part of one, I'm going to assume you want to be a part of the other interested parties. And so as to make sure that, someone doesn't request that they want to be on the interested parties list for the CPC and they get omitted from the interested parties list for the City Council. Just to play it safe, if you let me know that you want to be an interested party, I will make you an interested party for both of these entitlement requests, or not entitlement, but both of these actions that are before the city. Again, that City Council case number, council file number is, let me get it 1 second. Council file is 220297. And so I'm not sure exactly how the city clerk operates. We're a department of city planning, so I don't know how they operate precisely, but I'm not sure if they send out email communications for interested parties. And so I would need to get your physical address so that they can send out a hard copy. I know sometimes the hard copy gets lost in the mail, or address is whatever. A physical copy is a physical copy. If you send me an interested parties, if you want to be a part of the interested parties list, and it's for the CPC, sorry, if you want to be a part of the interested parties list, and it's for the city planning, let me say this one more time. You want to be part of the interested parties list, and it's for the city council's consideration of the Skippy. I will send the city clerk all the information. However, if they only do a mailing to the address, I will mail you or email you the notice once I receive it. I may not receive it, immediately. We're a different agency, and so I may receive it at a different time that it would be mailed out. But once I receive it, if you're on the list, I can send you an email to ensure that you get it. If you want to get a hard copy, we would need to get your physical address so that the city clerk can send you a mail out of that. We're going to try one last time for Aloha, and then we're going to close this meeting. Aloha, you had one more comment?
Hello?
Yes?
Hi, I'm interested in being in that party, the interest of party list.
Can you send me an email? My email address, I can give it to you right now.
Yes, please.
Sure. It's my name is Oliver, Oliver, .netburn, NETBURN. So Oliver and then .netburn. It's a compound word, netburn, at lacity.org.
Perfect, thank you. I was also curious on how they gathered the data of how there wouldn't be a significant impact on the parking and traffic on Sunset from this structure.
Let me just quickly then call up Ryan. You can just quickly speak to that. I have my answer, but it would probably be better to get the expert. Oh, no.
Ryan Kelly, this one's for you. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. It was based on the guidelines provided by LADOT, where we went out and performed traffic counts at the intersections during the weekday AM and PM peak hours. That's from 7 to 10 a.m. and 3 to 6 p.m. We pull out the peak hour, the highest hour of traffic volumes during those hours, and analyze the volumes based on their methodologies. It's worth noting that since the guidelines have shifted and the performance metric has gone from LOS to VMT, that things have changed a lot in terms of the transportation analysis world. And currently, if this project were to come along right now, it would actually be screened out entirely of having to perform a transportation impact analysis because it falls below the threshold requiring an analysis, and the VMT results are all very good. So, but yeah, that's how we do it. We go and do ground counts. These were done years ago, before the pandemic, so they're not affected by the atypical pandemic-related conditions.
Atypical pandemic reasons. Okay.
I think what that means is that over the last 2 years or so,
right.
we can all appreciate the lack of traffic in the city of LA. However, presumably that will not be ongoing, and it's good. I guess it's good and bad.
Well, I mean, there's been like a lot of changes recently with traffic as well, so I feel like that'd be an important thing to take into account when finding the numbers of how this is going to affect the community. It's really interesting that they came to the conclusion that it won't have an impact, and not even taking into account when there is like a Dodgers game or a concert in the Dodger Stadium or any other type of event that already is a high traffic period in peak hours. It's all, even with school. Did they even take into account when that Virgil Middle School, as of right now, every single weekday from like 2 to whatever time, it's full of cars down Lemoyne and Montana from students trying to get picked up. I just don't understand how they were able to come to the conclusion that adding, I don't even know how many number of units will not affect traffic or the pedestrian traffic. I just think that's incredibly untrue, and I wish that they could reconsider that. And that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And then lastly, even I said that 2 minutes ago. Well, hold on, we got. So I'm going to, I'm going to give everyone, because we had an opportunity to speak earlier, and I don't want to drag this on, but Brian, so we have 4 other people who've asked to speak. I'm going to let everyone briefly speak. So Brian, if you'd like to go ahead.
Hey, I just want to agree with the lady who was speaking. It's bumper to bumper, and I'm talking at 3 o'clock and 3:30 in the afternoon. It's bumper to bumper going east toward Alvarado. I mean, it's literally takes a half hour to get from Silver Lake back to Echo Park. And this is the off season of baseball. So when baseball season starts, it's going to be hideous. Kids are back in school. She's absolutely right. Trying to get up Lemoyne or, get around on Logan is another nightmare. Basically, there's nothing but cars. And, when they build this thing, it's just going to totally disrupt and destroy traffic beyond Alvarado. And, there's really nothing else to say. There's just no way this is going to be a win-win for anybody. People loathe this. That's why they, it's just ruining the neighborhood with too many cars, and the design that they've got lined up for this thing is just basically so generic looking and so awful. Anyway, I don't want to go on, but thank you very much. I just wanted to agree with the lady who was speaking.
Stephen Luftman, please unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for letting me talk. I just wanted to ask that a full EIR be done on this. It obviously is a designated historic landmark, even though that landmark was bogusly reduced to a bar top and a sign, and certainly a full EIR should be done. Thank you.
Yep.
Emma Rawls, please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi, this is Emma Rawls speaking. I'm a former resident of Silver Lake, current resident of San Pedro. I also wanted to echo the concerns. I want to ask that a full EIR be done for this project. As others have said, traffic has been disastrous in that area even before this. As a cyclist, even pre-pandemic, I would take to masking to deal with fumes from cars. I can only see this getting much worse. And lastly, I just want to emphasize that Taix is the kind of place that cannot be replicated once it's gone. It's a place I've taken literally every out-of-town visitor to give them a taste of old Los Angeles. Once it's gone, even if it comes back in a different form, it just won't be the same thing. So I would urge you to find a solution that can incorporate the existing Taix building. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Cindy, please unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I was wondering what very low income housing meant. I think they said that they have a number of units that have that. I was wondering, what that means exactly.
So I can, I'll try and speak to that. I'm not sure if I have exactly the percentages directly, but so there's an AMI, which is the average median income for the County of Los Angeles. I believe that average median income is somewhere in, I don't want to say it because it don't sound bad. I think it's somewhere in the range of 50 to 60,000. But so the AMI is then the very low income for the average for that AMI is 50% of that income. And so if you have a income level of 50% of the AMI, then you are considered to be in the very low income category. And the rent rates that are provided for those units are then based on a formulation by our housing department that sets the price for a rate that is affordable to that income bracket. And so I think I know of someone who is utilizing one, and I think it's a studio apartment, and their rent rate is approximately, this is in the middle of Hollywood, on Santa Monica Boulevard, and I think their rent is $740 a month for a studio apartment. It ranges based on whether or not it's a studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, and the income of the household is, based upon all the incomes of the household. And so, but essentially it's a percentage of the AMI is what determines whether or not you're a very low income. They have an extremely low income, which is below that, low income, and then moderate income levels.
So does that mean that people get approved to have a certain rent? Or like, let's say there's a family of 4 and their income is $40,000 a year. Would they be able to afford, like, let's say a 400 square foot studio apartment at $700 or less?
Well, sorry, I mean, basically, I don't know if they can afford it or not. I guess the easiest way to sort of describe it is basically there is an average median income, AMI. There are then certain categories within the AMI for levels of income: extremely low, very low, low, moderate. Those are essentially a percentage of the AMI, so 25%, 50%, 75% of the AMI. And then based on what are deemed to be appropriate rent rates for someone with that income level. And so I think, and I'm not a housing department, but I think typically, people should be spending more than 20 or 30% of their monthly income on housing. And so if your monthly income is X number of dollars, essentially the formula is such that, you're not spending more than 20% of your monthly income in order to pay for your rent. So whether or not, the example that you provided where a family of 4 with a $40,000 income can afford the rent, the idea is that essentially the formula is that a family like that, given their income level, isn't spending more than 20%, 30% of their monthly income. And they just become flat rates. And so it's, like I say, in the case that the one that I'm familiar with, it's a flat rate. So anyone who, qualified as a very low income household would have received the studio unit for approximately $750 or whatever it was a month. And that should be essentially deemed to be affordable based on that income rate.
I guess I'm wondering how people in the community who have this need would be able to navigate that and live in the complex.
Right, so that's sort of an ongoing question that at least I've had, and I think the city is trying to grapple with. I think that would be something that maybe the applicant can, and they don't need to jump back on here, but maybe the applicant can facilitate a way in which to make notice to the community of the affordability opportunities here, affordable units. And so that the people who live in the neighborhood are sort of given notice of these affordable units, and if they qualify, they can submit their application and potentially obtain one of the units that are going to be made available for the very low income households.
And what percentage of the housing is going to be very low income?
Let's see, so we have just looking at it now. I don't want to say what the percentages, because percentages are weirdly calculated, but basically there's 166 units that are going to be coming, that are being proposed. 24 of those units are for very low income households. So whatever that percentage is, but essentially you have 24 units out of this development that would be very low income households.
I see. Thank you.
Sure. Aloha, I'm going to, I know you have another question, but I think you had we've had several opportunities, and if you have any questions, you can email me, and I'm happy to answer them. But given that we've now had this hearing for coming up on 2 hours, I think I need to afford everyone the respect and allow the hearing to conclude. And so with that, as I indicated, this case will be considered by the City Plan Commission. No date has yet been scheduled. Please let me know if you want to be on the interested parties list. I can put your name down when we know the date. I can send you an email of the CPC hearing, because that's something that I'm directly aware of. I'll also put you down as an interested party for the City Council's consideration of the Skippy, and I will be able to notify you via email once I become aware of that. However, if you want to receive notice of that immediately and directly from the city planning or the city clerk, we would need to get your physical address for them to send notices to. So with that, I am going to conclude this hearing. Again, I'm always available for any comments if you'd like to send them to me via email, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I hope everyone feels like they've been afforded an opportunity to speak and to provide whatever comments they would like. And I will be taking all of these comments into consideration as we formulate our recommendation to the City Planning Commission for our future hearing date. With that, thank you so much.